Welcome to the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. As many of you know, our Destiny of Manufacturing podcast is powered by the Precision Metal Forming Association, which coincidentally, our guest today comes to us from the Precision Metal Forming Association. And of course, that would be Mike Vohland. Mike is, of course, the VP of Publishing and Sales. Publishing, of course, from Metal Forming Magazine, and sales from the Precision Metal Forming Association. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks so much, Dean. It is truly a pleasure to be with you this morning. It's a bittersweet morning, I got to tell you. I'm chiming in from Ann Arbor, outside of Detroit. And while I didn't grow up as a Lions fan, I certainly have adopted them as living here over the last 20 plus years. And a bit of a painful result last night after the game. So, but other than that, I'm doing fine.
Yeah, it was tough.
Happy to be on
loss.
this podcast. Yeah, it was a tough loss, but they're young, and I don't want to turn this into Sports Center, but I think they have a good nucleus. How's that?
That's perfect. I think that's a very good description of how that team is right now.
Yes.
I think, probably that describes how they wound up losing the game, was they lost their composure.
I believe so. There was clearly, to me, there was a team that had been there before and a team that hadn't been there before. But
yep.
It was
anyways
fun watching. Yeah.
That's very true. Let's talk about your big takeaway for today as we get into the destiny of manufacturing. What is your big takeaway?
Well, I guess my big takeaway would be, looking forward to trends the next 5 years. And I thought about this after you and I had talked, and I've written down a few things, and I don't know if they're going to be earth shattering. But they are, my opinions and, what I've seen. So I'll just be more than happy to go through what my trends or takeaways, those we're looking at as my destiny.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. You say, when you say trends, I think that's kind of a big picture concept of measuring things. I think, quantifying and measuring what we do in manufacturing and the benefits of doing that. I think in manufacturing, a lot of times we've heard a lot about AI. We hear a lot about just big data. We hear a lot about IoT, and all of those things come back to what? They come back to the information that we need in order to make better decisions.
And make better things. You bet. Yep.
Absolutely. No question about it. So tell me, what are some of the trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So my perspective, and I don't want to editorialize, obviously, for 5 minutes on my background, but my perspective, I believe, is a little bit different, just because while I have all my professional adult life, which unfortunately has been longer than I care to admit, but I've always been in manufacturing in one way, shape, or form. I've never worked for a manufacturing company. I've always been on the publishing side of the industry that has, whether it's metal cutting or metal forming, but it's all been manufacturing in my life. So I think I've got a different perspective. I didn't grow up. My father didn't work for Ford or GM or what have you. So I wasn't in that growing up. And, I didn't have a summer job at a facility or a plant or anything along those lines. I, did all kinds of jobs, certainly, but nothing like this. So I'm looking at it as, what I've gleaned just from the publications I've worked for, and certainly being with PMA here for 4+ years, and just what we're trying to do at PMA. And I'll touch upon that a little bit, but also just, absorbing things and talking really with a lot of customers, and now with PMA, a lot of members. So, looking at it, whether it's as you mentioned, whether it's as futuristic as digital transformation and introducing AI to your manufacturing operation, what does that mean? Or maybe as simple as banging the manufacturing drum when it comes to retraining, retaining, and attracting labor. I look at it as these jobs they're skilled, they're plentiful, and they're very well paid. So that's one of the one part here, and I guess I'll start with that. Just again, a few of these items I know they've been forefront in the manufacturing. Honestly, I've heard a lot of these things for as long as I've been in this business, but labor for one is, while there are still, we as a manufacturing community are still way behind in actual bodies that are doing jobs. This has been an issue for years and years. I hate, I'm going to sound like my father, and I hate saying this, but my generation, we came out of college in the late 80s, early 90s, but spent a lot of time in the 80s as young adults. And they were the go-go 80s, whether you remember them or not, but, everyone wanted to, come out of college and become a yuppie and whatever that means. But manufacturing at that time, I think, as I remember it and think about it, at that, my generation, I think we looked at it as, we were seeing things on TV, we were seeing strikes, and I think certainly in the 70s and into the 80s, I think big manufacturing, and I didn't grow up in Detroit, but I'm just hearkening back to what I saw and read. I would say that manufacturing had earned its reputation then, in the 70s and 80s, and with my generation. So it just wasn't cool at all, and it was getting less cool by the second. But now I can honestly say, over the last several many years, I do think there's a movement, and it's real, whether it be statistically speaking, with comes to manufacturing jobs, or just looking at, I live in a college town, my brother's a teacher, high school teacher, and just seeing things along those lines, that a four-year school is not for everyone, and nor should it be. There are, and again, I'll reference my brother, who's a high school teacher at a private Catholic school in Illinois, and he counsels a lot of kids, and he will stop short of saying, a traditional four-year school, he will say it's not for everyone. He's not going to say it's a scam or anything like that. But there are a hell of a lot of jobs, and all broad brush manufacturing, if you look at HVAC or electrical, or going to a manufacturing facility, those are jobs that, and I hate to sound like a commercial, but they are plentiful, and if you got into an HVAC career, or an electrician, you will never not work.
Correct.
Just try to find somebody right now to come to your house, and you're going to wait a couple of weeks. And we all know that. We all experience that. So, but again, I do think that there's a real movement in terms of, hey, listen, there's a lot of paths, and it's not, it's again, it's not my generation thinking, there's no way I can do that. That's just not cool. That would be, that would be beneath me, or what have you. That there's absolutely a change in attitudes, and again, statistically speaking, I think that'll bear that out a little bit. But that's one of the bigger things that I'm seeing moving forward. That, and again, and I don't know that we'll ever have the bodies to be able to throw at all the jobs that are needed in this country. But I do think there's a bit of a trend when it comes to that. So I think mentally and attitudinally, that's good to see, and I've seen a lot of it.
Right. And so you touched a little bit about your background. What made you get into the manufacturing side of things from publishing?
Well, honestly, I wish I had a great tale for you, but it was just my first job out of college was with a magazine selling advertising space for a magazine. Shout out John Roberts, my first boss at Cutting Tool Engineering magazine. And that's still being published, by the way. But that was my entrance into the manufacturing side. And then I went on to another company that uh, solely did publications primarily for metal cutting, and then with here on PMA with obviously on the forming side.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I don't have this. I, again, I didn't start a summer job at the Ford plant or whatever, anything like that.
Right. Well, and neither did I. I did though have my dad worked for General Motors, so
Okay.
I have that is how I at least maybe got my interest in
Right.
manufacturing. And my grandfather was an electrician. My
And yeah, and
cousin,
my interest just really came because this was my first job, and then you're either going to be interested in it or not. It's
yes,
your job, and it interested me. It still interests me because you're making something. My my grandfather was actually a tool and die maker before he
oh
bought a piece of land and started farming, but that's not how he started off. So I guess it's maybe in the blood a little bit.
yeah, I don't. I think you there's an element of problem solving that if you have an interest in manufacturing really attracts those people that are
No question
interested in
about it. Yeah.
problems.
And again, and making things and making things better and providing things obviously is, I think, at its core, and I think that's probably a lot of people's core.
Right. So when we talk about manufacturing, some of the challenges on the workforce side of things, what are some of the changes you see coming over the next 5 years that might indicate that we're starting to reverse some of those trends? Do we see more of it from a willingness to do apprenticeships and in-house training? And also, is that something that we can see continuing?
Yeah, I do think that's a good uh, that's a topic we could talk for hours on too. But in-house training and apprenticeships, absolutely. And again, I'm coming from it now from an association standpoint that really, we are advocating for manufacturing. We do have a work, like many other really great associations out there. We do have a workforce development division section, and
Right.
this involves a lot of many things. Whether it would be conferences on management conferences, new management conferences, uh, webinars that we talk about workforce development, but we also have training software, manufacturing EDU, PMA, through PMA. And this has been, something I think we've had this 5 or 6 years now, but a real emphasis on that. And we're seeing a lot of, training and retraining through the software. And there are a lot of companies out there who, are buying our platform, are buying our classes because they know it's a good, relatively quick way to train up their people, again, whether it's retraining or training in general. But just based on the amount of seats that we're selling, and some of our competitors and or partners seats that they're selling in their software training platforms is very encouraging. And I think that's probably my biggest takeaway when it comes to workforce development. You would also ask about something else within that. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was rambling.
Yeah. No, that I think that covers it perfectly. One of the things that I think is important now, you're on the media side also, which is tremendously important. I think it's undervalued
No.
as far as the communication of our message. At the end of the day, we have an obligation
Yeah.
to try and communicate our message of why manufacturing is important, why this is vital, not only just from a stability standpoint of the country, but from the standpoint of we make a difference. And I think that's an area that is often underrepresented from the standpoint of people understanding the value of something like the Precision Metal Forming Association, because I see it as communicating that message. What do you say about that?
No, I think, right when you said that, I really thought about, uh, it is a necessity, in my opinion. If you look at, and we are very different, obviously, from whatever newspaper you may or may not read or read growing up. We're not breaking news, certainly. And you hear a lot about, well, there's a lot of newspapers, media outlets going out of business, or there's misrepresentation through the interwebs, and so there's a real need and there's a dearth for that type of information and that type of reporting. I broad brush this widely, we in the media and business to business publications, and I'm not saying it's an easy road right now. Print media is, costs are going crazy. Paper is a commodity. It just keeps going up. Postage. I get an email seemingly every other week that we're getting a postage increase, and so it's not the high margin business it used to be. But again, we're not breaking news. However, we are a monthly magazine, and we are talking about. We're not reporting. We're writing about and discussing through various media platforms on how to do your job better, and what it takes to do the job, and case studies, and what the company X was having a problem with one of their suppliers, or one of their customers, and this is how the problem is solved. We love good content like that. And honestly, based on our circulation, the we're audited. We're an audited magazine, which means a third party company goes through our circulation and says, okay, we see that you're reaching these 44,000 people, whether it be print or digital. But we know our magazine's free, and our magazine's being requested. And to me, it'd be the easiest thing in the world for someone to say, no, thank you, I no longer want this free publication. And as a side note, out of our 44,000 some odd subscribers, about 30,000 still request it as a print magazine. I'll have a board meeting here in next month, and I'll invariably be asked, why are you still printing the magazine? I said, well, because 30,000 people are asking for it. But roundabout way of saying, to your point, yes, there is a need and there's a thirst, and and I just know this based on what I just said. And if you look at our web numbers as well, that continue to increase, and we've got outlets like this podcast we're talking about right now. People want to see this and hear this and read about this, and for no other reason. Again, we're unfortunately, Sports Illustrated just went out of business. I mean, it will no longer be printed. You and I, growing up, if we would have said this at a 16-year-old Dean and a 16-year-old Mike, we both would have said, you're out of your mind. But they're done. They're kaput, because there are so many other outlets. But for us, it's again, I'm not saying we're making wheelbarrows full of money or anything like that, but I know that there is a need, and that just goes to, and you brought up a great point. That just goes to, I have to believe, and I do know this, that based on what we're seeing, how people want to consume this type of information, there is absolutely a want for a type of information. And we have some partners and competitors that I would think would tell you the same thing. So yes, people want to know about manufacturing. People want to know how to do their job better. And it's, if we published a magazine with no advertising in it, and our subscription went down, then I would say, maybe nobody cares. But that's not the case.
Right. And, when we were talking about trends earlier, what are some of the key metrics you're seeing in the trends as we go forward here that would indicate that manufacturing is the place to be, or is on the rise, or things like that?
Well, I guess some of it's anecdotally, but some of it, if I look at, and looking at my notes and a few of the other takeaways I looked at, some things come to us. Well, ideas might come to us, and questions come to us. Hey, do you have this type of information? Or have you thought about doing a webinar on this? And, one of them would be, I've just got a couple here, sustainability. Or I know that's a huge buzzword and everyone talks sustainability and green footprint, but what does it really mean? And about 2 years ago, one of our larger members, who's a tier one supplier, came to us and said, we're really getting hammered here by our OEM, our primary customer, saying, listen, you really got to sort of get on board here. The proverbial rock is rolling downhill and it's not stopping. And I'll GM, for example, I believe GM, you can check these stats, but I don't get anyone in trouble. I believe they have said they can only control 20% of their carbon footprint, and the other 80% are their supply base. And so they are very keen on their suppliers sort of getting in line from a footprint standpoint, sustainability, whatever word or term you want to use. But end of the day, you really, as a small-ish or large-ish manufacturer, really need to think about what you're doing to help Big Brother or your biggest customer, and so we've done webinars, and again, things like that. This came to us, and I kind of never thought about it, but so that right there, I know that they're taking that seriously moving forward, and that's not gonna, they're not going to backtrack on that. Nobody's going to backtrack on that. Another thing is, and reshoring, the word reshoring, again, it's hackneyed as well. And I know we've heard it 1,000 times, and I have been hearing about reshoring since I came in here, and since I started working out of college. Right. And and one of our partners, and Harry Moser, God love him, he's been banging that resort. I think he's been with you.
Yes, he's been on the podcast before too. Yeah.
And 20 years ago, I'd see Harry at a trade show. I'm like, oh, Harry, you're going to talk about reshoring. Okay. And he would, and, be great. But now we're truly seeing a big difference, when it comes to either reshoring or nearshoring. And this was even, the movement even, I think, started even pre-COVID. But, it's China has some demographic issues that we all know about. And, they still have a lot of bodies that can throw at things. But, that has not gotten, their labor has not gotten any less expensive. It'll continue to get more expensive. And, with their upside down pyramid demographics. So there are opportunities. And I'm not saying that everything's gonna be made here. We have issues with obviously from a labor standpoint, a wage standpoint, making everything here. But that's another thing that I'm seeing some real sizzle behind the steak, I guess, because I'd mentioned, okay, sustainability, talking about that, reshoring, everybody's talking about that. But I'm just seeing some I don't want to say a movement, but just some real clear efforts and some real clear action when it comes to those types of things.
Okay, great. And we're just about out of time here, Mike. It goes by pretty fast here on the show.
Sure
so
does.
Tell us how everybody can reach you.
Yeah, thank you. That did go quick, and I probably rambled a bit. We're here early in the morning. I had some coffee, but I can be reached at PMA can obviously you can check out our website at www.pma.org, and I can be reached at mvohland@pma.org. And I'm on the website, and there's a lot of great stuff on our site when it comes to manufacturing, and what's either through PMA or certainly through MetalForming magazine and MetalFormingMagazine.com. You can check that out and read that, and if you want to subscribe, you can certainly do that. So there's a myriad of ways to reach out to us. And if you have any ideas about, anything that you want PMA or MetalForming to research or talk about or write about or podcast about, please let us know. We're an open book, and we'd like to hear your ideas as well.
Right. Thank you so much today for being on the show, Mike. Again, this is the Precision Metal Forming Association's presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. Everybody, make it a great day.
Thanks, Dean. A lot of fun. Thank you.